Well, fire safety is always an important item to discuss, and especially in our community. And join us now are two captains with the Orange County Fire Authority. That's Steve CONCIALDI and William LACKEY. Thanks so much for joining us today. Fire safety is always important, no matter what your age is. But I think as we get older too, it's really important, especially when people live at home as well, and to have those smoke alarms.
Right, and smoke alarms save lives. Just last month there was a fire here in Laguna Woods, and Bill could talk about that.
Yeah.
Right. We had an evening fire in a single-family home. Nice woman that lived by herself. She had prepared herself to go to bed, and a few minutes after she went to bed, she was woken by her smoke alarm.
Wow.
Smoke alarm alerted her to a fire that had occurred in an vanity area of her home, and that enabled her to get out safely and call 911. So that was the working smoke alarm was really instrumental in saving her life.
What started that fire, do you know?
Yes, the investigation concluded that the fire was started by some clothing that was too close to some lights on a vanity.
Oh.
So she had used the vanity light, and the clothing just caught on fire, smoldered for a little while, and didn't really take off until after she went to bed.
Yeah.
So the smoke alarm was really instrumental in saving her life.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's just something that little, a vanity light and some clothing can actually start a fire and really cost someone their life.
Yeah, it is. And we just we advocate trying to really be diligent about looking for those kind of things that might be a problem. Cooking items on a stove that's left on, lights that are left on next to combustibles, or extension cords that are overloaded, things like that.
Yeah. Candles. Are people still using candles? And is that an issue?
Candles start fires quite often. Right. So yeah, we do ask people to exercise caution when using candles.
Yeah. A lot of people have smoke alarms, but now carbon monoxide alarms are being requested as well in many homes. Is that becoming common?
Well, they're required.
They're required.
And
for new homes, or is that just
for all homes?
Really?
And on each level. So if you have a single-story home, you have to have one. If you have a two-story, you have to have two. But just in Placentia, probably 2 weeks ago, there was grandparents, and they were watching their grandson, and they went out that evening. They pulled into the garage, and they thought they shut their car off. Well, the key was one of those keys that you could remove. They were inside the house, and the car remained running. So they had two dogs, and when they were going to bed, for whatever reason, the dog of 14 years would not go upstairs. And they didn't know why. It slept with them for years. Right. So they were upstairs. During the morning when they woke up, the grandmother, she was feeling terrible. She could not get her husband out of bed or her grandson out of bed. And so she came downstairs, she called 911, and actually before she came downstairs, there was a second dog that was upstairs that was throwing up.
Yeah,
she called 911, our firefighters went, right when they got to the front door, she started explaining this. They quickly ran upstairs and they saw the dog throwing up. They carried the grandfather and the grandson out. Then they called our hazardous materials team in, and they went in. Before they got there, other firefighters were suiting up, putting a breathing apparatus on. They went up, they rescued the dog that was upstairs. And then when our hazardous materials team came up, they had the 6-gas monitor, and before they even entered the front door was open, they said it was going off the charts, so much carbon monoxide. And so they started searching, and it wasn't until they got to the garage door, and the door was hot. They opened the door up, and they said their masks fogged up. And they went up to the car, and just by touching the car, it was so hot. It had been running all night long. Yes. It had a lot of gas in it. But what was explained to me is years ago, these people would have been dead.
Right.
I mean, it was a newer car, so the emissions aren't as bad, but still, it could have been deadly.
Right.
And they were extremely sick, all three of them.
And that's the amazing thing about this new technology, especially with electric cars and the hybrids. I've gotten in a couple of my friends' cars, and I can't even tell they're on. They're so quiet, and then they pull them in the garage, and you think you turned it off, and the thing is still running.
Right.
And boy, you walk in the garage and you hit that, it'll knock you out.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's
and so if they would have had a carbon monoxide detector, it would have gone. It would have alerted them.
Right. Is there a combination alarm out there yet? Has anybody made that?
There is.
Okay.
Right.
Very good. I'll have to look into that, obviously. Well, let's talk about water safety. Not only you know, you guys work within, you know, fire safety, but obviously water safety is important too. And unfortunately, we're having a drowning still throughout the county.
Right. With the great weather we have and the abundance of community pools and backyard pools and the beautiful beaches, we have a lot of drowning calls here in Orange County. So 69 already this year, and 26 of those have been fatal. And just this past weekend, Bill dealt with a couple of them, and I dealt with a few of them too. But we had a 59-year-old lady that was in the backyard of her pool here in Mission Viejo, and they were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary, and they were just having a nice evening in the backyard. Late afternoon, early evening, her husband went inside, and she was just doing some gardening right around the pool. Well, something happened where she fell in, and then her husband did come out, and then she was down in the water. Unfortunately, she did not know how to swim, and her husband didn't know how to swim. And so it just, there's that panic that sets in when you can't swim. So that's why we stress having an isolation fence around your pool or spa.
Right.
That way, if a grandchild, or if you have small kids, or if you do not know how to swim, you're not going to fall in. And I've been doing this for over 2 years now. We've had gardeners that have been working around and somehow either tripped and fell, and the same things happened to them. So again, isolation fences. Right. And then I'll have Bill talk about Irvine Lake.
Yeah, last weekend, unfortunately, we had a drowning out at Irvine Lake. Two longtime friends were out renting on a pontoon boat, fishing for the day. Neither one of them knew how to swim. They're both from LA County. A 61-year-old male was at the back of the boat, and his friend heard him fall into the water in a splash. His friend tried to help him out of the water, but he himself was pulled in also, and was just barely able to grab onto the anchor line. There were life vests in the boat, but neither one was wearing a life vest. So eventually the Orange County Sheriff's Department dive team came out. We did have our swift water and water rescue team out there searching that evening for the gentleman, but it required a dive team to come out and recover him the next day. So, you know, our message once again is that if you don't know how to swim, you're around water, you have to be extra vigilant.
Yeah, and wear the vest.
Wear the vest.
The biggest
especially
thing
if you're
is,
in a boat.
wear the vest. You know, even with children, you know, sometimes, oh, I don't want to wear it, and no, you should wear it.
Right.
Even if the kid's a good swimmer, make the child wear it, and especially if an adult can't swim, then they must wear it.
Right,
And unfortunately, they chose not to.
Last weekend, there was a 2-year-old in Yorba Linda had some water wings on. She had to go to the bathroom, and we don't recommend water wings because they fail or they give you that false sense of security. And so she basically said, Mom, I need to go to the bathroom, took her water wings off, ran in to go to the bathroom, and then the mother was tending to another child, and the little girl just came out quicker than Mom thought and went right for the pool, jumped in, and it wasn't for a little bit, they realized she's in the deep end and underwater. So Mom jumped in, pulled her out, they did some rescue breaths, some CPR, she started vomiting and throwing and spitting up. And she's going to be okay.
Right.
We hope. She was transported to Chalk Hospital. But again, these things happen so quickly. These children drown without a sound because nobody hears them. It's so quick. Or an adult, if he would have had his life jacket on, he would be alive today.
Right.
If there was an isolation fence, the 59-year-old lady would be alive today. So these are all
Well, in
tragic.
our community, we have, I believe, 6 or 7 swimming pools. They're all manned by lifeguards at that time. But still, you know, even with the lifeguard, you know, you need to be diligent about, you know, who you're with, and, you know, swimming with a friend is always helpful. Obviously, the lifeguards are there to make sure nothing happens, but like you said, it's such a silent killer that, you know, you sometimes don't even hear it. Next you know, you've had someone on the deep end, and it's important that you're with somebody so that they can help you. And I was even thinking too, the people that passed away in Mission Viejo or some of the landscape, you know, if you have the fence, it's great too, but if they had maybe that hook that they have sometimes, I've seen them at some of the pools where you can actually pull somebody out, you know, that would probably help a little bit, at least get them to the, you know, shallow side, and maybe be able to lift somebody up. But it's important that they have pool safety items around those pools.
The fence is the best. That's the best barrier.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes the hook, you're trying, you panic, but that fence is a must.
Yeah. Well, one of the other items you want to talk about is the Orange County Fire Authority. They send out personnel to various fires throughout the state, and a lot of time it's you know, up there in the forest, right?
Right. So we we have a great relationship with the state, and we basically, when there's a fire anywhere in the state, we're going to send resources through a mass mutual aid system. So at one time this month, and I didn't look today, but earlier in this week, we had over 75 of our firefighters or our fire personnel up at various fires throughout the state. And basically, at one point, we had 12 of our brush engines and a number of people on overhead assignments. And these were part of a team that we had, but these other guys are on brush engines that you can see this timber. We don't have these kind of conditions here. And then you have these fires that just run across the tops of the trees or get underneath. And it takes a lot of effort to fight these. Look at it, it's amazing, some of this firefighting. But some of these fires will burn until it snows, or until we get a serious rain, because underneath all these, there's a lot of duff and vegetation and so forth. Our firefighters have to mop that up because we don't want the fire that we think it's contained, then wind kick up and start it again. So yeah.
And you have the Big Bear fire that's still
the Summit fire.
Still going, Summit fire.
Right, so immediately we sent our helicopter. When that fire broke, our helicopter was sent, and then we had some other personnel that went up there. But there's a number of fires still burning throughout the state, mainly in the mop-up stage. But again, we have these firefighters out there that are working extremely hard.
It's amazing because you hear about these fires on the news because it's the only way we really hear about them, and then you just assume that they're done, they're gone. You know, they've been contained or 25% contained or whatever they are.
Yeah.
But yet you guys are still fighting them on a daily basis for months after, it seems.
Right.
Well, and also, and just to speak to the point, the reason that we're having so many fires is conditions of the drought conditions. It's so dry out there right now. The vegetation really has no moisture in it. And with the summer months in the heat, anything that's discarded cigarette or gardener equipment or anything like that, even in the local area here, will trigger off a fire pretty quickly. And if you get some wind behind it, then it's going to be really tough to fight.
Absolutely, especially with these heats, the heat we've had in the last few days and even the last month. You know, imagine we're red flag warning today. The winds aren't too bad, but the heat is out there. And,
so when we get the winds this fall,
Right.
we will have some fires here. It's extremely hot, extremely dry, like Bill said, but when we have the winds behind it, that's when a fire will quickly grow. And a lot of times it's somebody a gardener that's working and there's a spark, or a discarded cigarette, or a vehicle driving along the freeway or the toll road or the Ortega Highway.
Flat tire.
And, right, and just things will happen and it'll quickly grow. So we all need to be careful.
Or someone purposely setting a fire, and we get a lot of that too.
Right, you're on the investigation side, so you see a lot of that.
Right.
And that's just an unusual criminal activity for me, but that's just the way some people are.
Yeah, and people have different motivations for doing it. We investigate every fire, and if we do find there's criminal activity, we will prosecute.
Right, very good. Well, we appreciate you guys protecting the county and especially our community, Laguna Woods. Station 22 obviously has been our partner here for many, many years, and we appreciate all their service there. And we thank you for joining us on the program.
Certainly.
Thanks, Paul.
Appreciate it. That's the Orange County Fire Authority, and they join us, about once a month each time we get a chance to talk about fire safety, and more importantly as well as water safety as well. We're going to be back to wrap up the program right after this.